Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Start Here, the very special mini series within SugarMamma's Fireplay, where I answer your real life money questions with simple, practical, and empowering general advice. Now, today's question comes from a listener who wrote, "Hey, Canna, I keep on hearing how important it is for women to invest. However, I can't get my head around how compounding interest works. I have $5,000 saved up to get started and invest, and I plan on regularly investing $400 per month on top of this. But before I start, I feel I need to understand how compounding interest will help me become financially independent. Can you please help me break this down? I'm really sorry if this is a silly question. Tara." All right. First of all, there is no such thing as a silly question. The only silly question is the one that is not asked. And if there is one thing that makes the biggest difference between struggling financially and building serious financial independence, it is compounding interest, especially when it is given time to flourish. So, what I'm going to do is break this episode up into 4 or 5 parts. Firstly, I'm going to explain exactly what compounding interest is. And then I'm going to give you some examples so you can see what the potential exists for your financial future, Tara. And then I'm going to explain how to make the most of compounding for everybody's financial benefit. And then I'm going to show you some projections which can help you see what actually lies ahead for you. So let's get cracking. All right, compounding interest. What exactly is it? Okay, I'm going to strip it right back. Compounding is when you earn returns on your returns, which create more returns on your returns. For example, say you invest $5,000 and it grows by, say, 7% in the first year. That's $350. So next year, you're earning 7%, not on the original $5,000, but you're earning 7% now on the $5,350. So next year comes around and still it's another, say, 7%. And that 7% is based on the new fresh balance, which, as you know, is $5,350. So by the end of the year, you'll have about $5,724.50. That means your money is actually working harder and harder every year without you ever lifting a finger. Albert Einstein famously said, "Compounding interest is actually the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it, earns it. He who doesn't, pays it." Now, this is why compounding interest is your best friend as an investor, but it's also a double-edged sword because it is your worst enemy as a borrower, because interest can actually spiral out of control in the exact same way when it's applied to debt. So a loan of $5,000 at 7% interest means that if you don't make any repayments, you will actually owe $5,350 by the end of the year. And yes, if that same loan goes on for another 12 months, you will be charged 7% interest on the $5,350, which means you'll end up owing now, not $5,000, your original loan, you owe more, $5,724.50. So you can now see how people build wealth easily, but also can quickly get in over their head, all to the dual power of compounding interest. So your question is do you want this compounding interest, this 8th wonder of the world, working for you or against you? So let me give you some examples of compounding interest because it's really quite remarkable and a little bit sexy. So let's take case A. If you invest $1,000 a year at 3% interest, after 20 years, you'll have about $26,870, where $20,000 has been invested through your regular deposits, that $1,000 every single year. But you've actually earned, with your money working for you, thanks to compounding interest, $6,870. Now, case B. If instead you were able to access a higher interest rate. You're able to earn more. And of course, risk versus return. But at 7% interest, that same money grows to nearly $40,995 in the same period of time. But this is the cool thing. This time, you have actually earned $20,995 in interest on those same $20,000 deposits. So you can see here, get a higher interest rate, your money is working harder for you with compound interest. Now let's just ramp it up a little bit, because I know, Tara, that you have so much potential ahead of you. Now, what we'll do is we'll take the same projections, but instead this time, we're going to add $5,000 at the start and then continue on with our $1,000 per month. Now, using exactly the same variables, 7% interest, 20-year period, by the end of that 20-year stage, it will actually jump to almost $60,000, $344 over that same 20 years. So now your $20,000 worth of deposits has actually helped build $35,344 in interest. So what is the lesson here? Well, the higher the return, the more you can contribute, particularly upfront as well as ongoing. And the longer that you leave it invested to work its magic, the more exponential the results will be for you. This is exactly why starting early, even if it's only with a small amount of money, $100, $10, I don't care, just get started. And by adding money into your investment portfolio every week or every fortnight or every month is so incredibly powerful over the long run. By year 20, the annual earnings in case B are more than triple in case A. And this is all because of compounding interest accelerating over time, particularly towards the end of the 20-year period. So, why do they say time is everything? Well, it's an important saying because it's accurate. Time is the secret sauce. After about 15 to 20 years, this is where that growth that I'm talking about, that exponential growth, really does take off. It's like a rocket ship, but only later on, after you've been patient, you've been resilient, you've stuck to the game plan. It is no longer a flattish straight line. It is exponential. It's onwards and upwards at an increasingly aggressive rate for your financial wealth. As you would have known, I'm always banging on about my financial mentor, Peter Thornhill, and he has a brilliant book, which is perfect for you right now, Tara, to read, called Motivated Money. It has, I think he's sold like 70 or 80,000 copies. It's absolutely mind-blowing and so inspiring, but perfect for you to read right now. And he shows in his book, which is the latest version, the value of $100,000 invested in 1979 in the industrial shares index would be worth over $20 million today. Now, when you look back at history, these numbers are mind-blowing. You've got to go and check this out for yourself, everybody who's listening. It's not just Tara. If you invested in $1 actually in Australian shares back in 1900s and reinvested every single dividend, today it would be worth over $1 million. However, if you had put that same $1 into cash, into say a term deposit, it would only be worth about $272. So if you're investing for the long run, where would you prefer to invest your money? Cash or industrial shares? Now, obviously, that's a whole other episode in itself, where to invest, how to get started, how to navigate the whole process. But I want to make you aware of the power of compounding interest and the difference over the long run between two very different asset classes. And of course, with very different levels of volatility and risk. But these are all very manageable things. And of course, it goes without saying, inflation is still very important here. You've got to pay attention to it because inflation will actually impact the real value of that money. But you need to remember the principle of compounding interest remains the same. growth assets outpace inflation over time. And that is exactly the power of compounding when you use growth assets like shares and property. As I said, yes, they are volatile in the short to medium term, but long term effect for your wealth creation journey, it could potentially be extraordinary for you. So, if this is so incredible, let's call it even, magical, why are people not taking advantage of this? Well, I may sound a little bit tough here, and I don't mean it in a bitchy way or a judgmental way, but I also want to be really honest here because by me sharing with you why people don't do this, I'm helping, hopefully, protect you from falling into this exact trap. So, there are lots of reasons why people don't do this, even though it's so easy. People are impatient. Everybody's impatient, particularly right now in the world that we live in. But when it comes to investing, people are not willing to do the work. They want that get rich quick scheme, even if it means taking a ridiculous amount of risk on board. Also, a lot of people are too conservative. They leave their money in cash, which, as we all have seen with recent inflation, barely grows at all. But interestingly, I believe that often that fear is actually really a lack of understanding as to what investing is really all about and how to obviously navigate those risks in a smart, intelligent, proactive way. And, they don't really understand all the opportunities, the pros and cons, admittedly, of investing in long-term growth assets. The other thing is some people procrastinate. They leave it too late to get started and they never actually give compounding interest the opportunity to really flourish for them. And also then they try and time the market. They're waiting for the next crash. But the thing is, the next crash may not happen for another 5 years. And in the meantime, they've missed out on like 4.5 years of growth. And they end up, buying at a really high point in the market or selling low. Or in most cases, they continue to sit on the fence and never actually buy at all. Often we see this sometimes with analysis paralysis. And this is why I say, stop looking in the rear vision mirror and look at where you're going. Keep your eye on the prize. Look forward. Now, the other thing is why people don't do it is, or they do it wrong even sometimes, and then they pull their money out, is they don't do it in an intelligent way. They don't properly diversify their money. They put all of their money into, say, one stock. Now, that is fraught with risk. You're going to have exceptional levels of market volatility. And yes, it may pay off, great, but also there's a lot of risk that you're taking on. It's not how I would do things. And this is why I'm such a huge fan of listed investment companies, which you can buy on the ASX, not product advice, but examples, for example, Whitefield. I have a brilliant episode, which I'll go and make sure I link actually for everyone in the podcast notes with Angus Glusky, who is the head of Whitefield. And it's absolutely incredible the information that he shares in what goes into that investment portfolio. But something like that, or even an ETF, the money is properly diversified. Another reason why people don't do this is they fall for fads or even worse, scams that promise quick wins, but often collapse and leave them with absolutely nothing, or something that's very illiquid and they can't actually get rid of and they're stuck holding a lemon of an investment. Or the other option, which I see particularly, as people change scenarios, and sometimes this is unavoidable, but sometimes this is just a bad decision, and that is people change their mind or they change their game plan before that, 15, 20-year exponential growth, was going to have the opportunity to even kick in for them. Now, of course, as I said, sometimes it's just the situation. You have to sell or make a change. Maybe it's a relationship breakdown or a change in financial situation or a change in financial goals even. But, this is why a lot of people never actually get to experience these amazing benefits of compounding interest. And this is why I say, you've got to get started, Tara. You've got to stay invested. You've got to make sure your portfolio stays invested, which is very easy to do with, ETFs and listed investment companies. And you've got to focus on growing your passive income, not just your investment portfolio. Or in this case, interest repayments, and learning how to ignore the short-term noise, the headlines, the panic, the herd mentality, the fear. There are so many opportunities to invest every single minute of the day. You've got to know where's the opportunity and which ones are right for you and your goals. Your job right now is to let compounding interest do all that heavy lifting for you, whilst you just focus all of your time and energy on your long-term financial freedom goals and game plan. By putting money into your share portfolio, reviewing it regularly, increasing your automatic regular investment plan, adding ad hoc lump sum money when you can. That is your job right now. Let compounding interest take care of the rest for you. Now, what exactly does this, now that we've broken it down, mean for you, Tara, and for everybody listening right now? So, Tara, you said in your DM to me that you've got $5,000 to start with and you're adding $400 per month. That is almost $5,000 a year, which is pretty impressive. Now, if you invested that consistently into a diversified portfolio of dividend-paying shares, such as, ETFs or listed investment companies, earning 7% per annum over a 20-year period, you could be looking at an investment portfolio worth over $228,000 with only $96,000 of your physical money that has been invested. That's the money that's come out of your pocket. You've put $96,000 in to build a $228,000 investment portfolio. That is really cool. So you've actually earned over $127,000 in interest. That is, my friend Tara, your money working for you. And not only that, the income, which in this case is those dividends, which hopefully if you've invested in, say, something like Australian industrial shares that have franking credits, should also be growing year after year. At some point, those dividends may actually end up being able to cover your living expenses. That is your bills. And that's the financial independence and freedom that I am talking about. And the beautiful thing for you, Tara, and for everybody listening right now is this is not complicated. This is not confusing. This is not some sort of, very active trading strategy. It is really simple. It's not fancy. It just means that you keep on investing as much as you possibly can, and you can safely afford to, and you reinvest all the returns. You let compounding interest run its course, and when that day comes and those dividends you decide are big enough for you to start taking and you don't need to worry about reinvesting them anymore, that is when you can choose to switch off the automatic dividend reinvestment plan and take those dividends purely for yourself, for you to enjoy. This is exactly what Einstein meant when he called compounding interest the eighth wonder of the world. So, how exactly do we maximize compounding? Now that you understand how cool it is, how powerful it is, how do we get it working even harder for us? Well, I've done a quick checklist for you. So number one is just to get started. The earlier, the sooner, the better. In fact, I hope you, Tara, listen to this episode and actually get started today. Please, can you make sure you just quit the excuses that are holding you back as you're wasting precious time? I also highly recommend investing on a regular basis. I know you've mentioned $400 per month, and that's brilliant and that's consistent. But when you can, increase that amount the moment you can afford to, when you get a pay rise, when you get a promotion. Also, focus on long-term growth assets like shares, property. Yes, cash doesn't have an important part of, as part of an overall investment wealth creation strategy, but you need to be looking at assets that are going to really work efficiently for you for your long-term goals. It's also really important that you stay diversified. Stop chasing fads that you might see on social media. This is why I love listed investment companies and ETFs, because they make it super easy and you don't get tempted to go down this garden path of what's the latest trend or the latest product or the latest company and service and not really look at the true financials. Do yourself a massive favor. Save that time and energy to earn more money and outsource all those complicated, highly technical and skill-based investment decisions to a fund manager, through a listed investment company or an ETF. The other thing I recommend you do is reinvest every single cent. As tempting as it may be to go and spend a few dividends here and there, don't do it. If you do, you will regret it shortly after you've spent that money. And on that note, if any financial windfalls come your way, like a tax refund or a bonus, or you sell something, if you can afford to, put it into that investment portfolio of yours. Watch it grow. And then finally, turn down the noise. Markets, as I said, they go up and down every single second of the day. But over decades, growth always wins as human endeavor prevails. Now, Tara, I really hope that you are smiling right now. I hope you have a sense of relief and clarity because hopefully you've just seen the real reason why I am so passionate about getting women investing. Not thinking about investing, but actually investing and actually building up 6, 7, even 8-figure investment portfolios because I believe in every single person who listens to this podcast. And to anyone else wondering about compounding, this is how small, consistent actions with patience and, of course, perseverance really do help build financial independence. This is not about luck. It's not about timing. It's about the quiet, steady magic of returns on returns. Become a bit of a dark horse with building your investment portfolio. And remember, the most important thing is never trying to time the market. It is time in the market. So open up an online share trading account today, if you haven't already, and go and invest that $5,000. Set up an automatic regular investment plan and work on investing more the moment you can. I promise you, you will not regret doing this. Now, a massive thank you, Tara, for your question. And of course, for everybody else listening and hopefully enjoying this episode. If this episode resonated with you, can you please make sure you share it with a friend or a loved one who needs a reminder to get started investing today and build that 5, 6, 7, 8-figure dollar investment portfolio for their financial freedom? And of course, if you have got any money questions you'd like me to cover on this Start Here series, send me a DM on Instagram at either SugarMamma TV or, if you like, Canna Campbell Official. All right, I'll see you next Friday on Start Here, part of the Sugar Mama's Fireplay playlist. Ciao for now.